Welcome to my channel. This is an indication of some of the things that I cover on a regular basis in my videos. If you haven't already subscribed, please feel free to do so, and don't forget to click the little bell so that you'll get notified of future videos. Please feel free to share my videos on your social media, and I hope you enjoy the video which follows. Well, hello everyone. I'm going to make another cheese, once again using this book. I really like the recipes in this book. They seem much simpler than others that I have seen. The one that I'm going to attempt is Scamorza. I think that's how you pronounce it. It's Italian and I'm not. As you can see, my poor old book has had better days. I guess that's a sign that it's being well used. Ricardo from the Attila's Garden channel gave me three possibilities for the cheese that I had in Italy on one of the farms that I worked on. Whenever they had a dinner party or whatever, they usually had steak for everybody else, but they're very considerate of the vegetarian. They bought a type of cheese, a nice thick slice of it, that you could grill, and it was smoked. He gave me three different possibilities, and I did some research on them. I'll never be 100% sure, but I'm quite sure that this is what I had. And it's a cheese that is, well, eaten quite fresh. It's only a few days old when it's ready to eat. You don't age it at all, but it has to be brined at the end of the process, and then you air dry it for 2 or 3 days, whatever. And then you can wrap it or vacuum pack it or whatever and keep it in the refrigerator for quite some time, I'm sure, as long as the vacuum pack isn't opened. But it doesn't have to have any long aging process, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And the one that I had was smoked, and I'll never know if it was naturally smoked or if they added a liquid smoke. I'm adding a liquid smoke. I found one that is for using with cheese. There's no chemicals involved. It's hickory smoke in soybean oil. I'm just a little confused as to when to add it. On the bottle, it says to add it to the curds prior to pressing. Well, this doesn't get pressed. Mine may get pressed briefly. I'm thinking about putting it in a mold, in the one that, well, the Manchego mold, just because I want it to have a uniform shape. But I mean, it'll only be in there for a half hour or so. I'm not pressing it. I read somewhere else, and can't find that right now, that you add it to the milk before adding the calcium chloride. So that's what I'm going to go with. 16 liters of milk, and it only has half a teaspoon of the liquid smoke. So I guess that gives you an idea of probably how strong the stuff is. And oil and water don't really mix, but I will try to mix it in with a little bit of water before I add it to the milk. And the whole process begins with milk at one of the higher temperatures I think I've ever made for making a cheese, 96 degrees Fahrenheit, 35.5 Celsius, and I think the milk is up to temperature now using my sous vide, so let's get started. Well, the milk has reached the target temperature of 96 degrees, and now you add the cultures, and this has two cultures, thermophilic and mesophilic. My thermophilic cultures come in these little sachets, and you would normally add 2 of these to ripen this amount of milk, 16 liters, 4 gallons US or whatever. And it's supposed to be a 1/4 teaspoon. I didn't measure it, but that's roughly a 1/4 teaspoon. And my mesophilic, I bought in a larger container. So that now just gets left on the surface to hydrate for 5 minutes. It's had its 5 minutes to hydrate, and now you mix it into the milk using an up and down motion with this thing. just drawing it down into the milk so that it's well combined. And maintaining the 35.5 degrees Celsius, 96 degrees Fahrenheit, it now ripens for 3/4 of an hour, 45 minutes. Well, it's had its 45 minutes to ripen at 96 degrees Fahrenheit, 35.5 degrees Celsius. And now I have 3 additions that I'm going to make. The first one that I'm adding is the liquid smoke. I went with a teaspoon rather than a half teaspoon. Reading the instructions on the bottle, it came from Wisconsin, by the way, the famous cheese state in the U.S. It said a half teaspoon for 2 pounds of curd, 16 liters of milk. I should get very close to 4 pounds of curd, maybe even over. So I've gone with 1 teaspoon, and all this racket that I'm making is trying to stir an oil into water, which doesn't work very well. I've got about 1/4 of a cup of tap water that I've mixed it in. And wherever it was that I did my reading the other day about using liquid smoke, it said to add it before you add the calcium chloride. I think I might have already mentioned the instructions on this bottle say to add it to the curds before you press them. I think that would be quite difficult to do, so mine's going in now. Has a lovely smoke scent coming out of it, so it reminds me of kippers. There's no fish involved, but the lovely smoked aroma anyway. Hopefully it's not too powerful in the final cheese. The next that I'm adding is the calcium chloride, 3/4 of a teaspoon of calcium chloride. And once again, I've diluted that in about 1/4 of a cup of water. For me, that's tap water. I'm on my own well. There isn't any additives, but if you're using city water that's been chlorinated and fluorinated and everything else, I would suggest you go buy yourself a bottle of pure spring water at the local corner store and use it. Chlorine is meant to kill bacteria, and we're trying to grow bacteria, so it wouldn't be good to add it to your cheese solutions. And the last addition is 3/4 of a teaspoon of rennet, diluted in the same way. Once I have this thoroughly mixed in, it gets covered and it stays at the 96 degree temperature for an hour to give the rennet a chance to set. And I've got to remember that this has to come out of the spatula thing that I use. I've only done it once, but I left it in there once. It's no great problem except that it is locked in. You have to cut the curd and whatever to get it out. So that is that. I'll bring you back in an hour's time. It's had its hour. Now we'll check to see what kind of a curd we have. Looking for a clean break. And there is a clean break. So it can now be cut into 1/2 inch, roughly 1/2 inch cubes. If you've watched my cheese making videos in the past, you've heard me describe this many times. I will go all the way across, cutting this way, and then I'll turn and come all the way across this way, which will give us sort of a hatch mark top on it. And then I use a large whisk to do the cutting up of the curd down below. So I'll bring you back when I finish this phase anyway. Did the first part of the cutting, and as I said, I use a whisk to do the cutting of the curd down below the surface into something similar to cubes anyway. Seems to work quite well. And just every time I make a circle around, I lower it down a little further. So I'll bring you back when I have reached bottom. Now that the curd has been cut, the cooking process begins. I've reset the sous vide to 104 degrees Fahrenheit. That's 45 degrees Celsius. And over at least the next 30 minutes, continue stirring until the curd and whey reach the 104 degree target temperature. And from my previous experience from using the sous vide, I know this is going to take me longer than 30 minutes, which is fine. You just don't want to do it too rapidly. A long, slow rising to the target temperature is quite okay, so I'll be somewhere between a half hour and an hour, I imagine. I'll bring you back at that time. Well, it just came up to temperature, and that took 55 minutes. Probably a bit faster than I thought it would, because I let the sous vide increase the temperature of the water outside of the stock pot here to 106 instead of just letting it go to 104 and hover there. So with the 2 extra degrees warmer than the curds and whey had to be, it increased, I think, faster anyway. So it's now at 104, and I have to continue stirring for another 15 minutes. I've removed the sous vide, and it is in another large stock pot of water, increasing the temperature of that water to 145 degrees Fahrenheit. And what is that Celsius? 63 degrees Celsius. And that's required for the next phase, or shortly anyway. There's a phase, I guess, in between, but the next phase where we need hot water is at 145 or 63 degrees Celsius. So I'll bring you back when I finish stirring here for 15 minutes. Just finished my 15 minutes of stirring, and now it gets poured through a cheesecloth lined colander. That is cheesecloth. I'm using a synthetic cheesecloth. I prefer it to butter muslin. Easier to clean, and it seems to last longer as well. And here goes nothing. Drain out for a bit, I guess. Slowly but surely. I'll lose it in the sink. Much of it, I think it's clogging some of the holes in the colander, but it's going down gradually, I guess. Okay. Now that is allowed to rest for 15 to 20 minutes while it continues to drain. And the curd hopefully will sort of solidify into a more solid mass that you can work with. So I'll bring you back in about 20 minutes time. Well, I have the sous vide in the stock pot next to me here, and it is at 145 degrees and holding. And this is the curd after it's had its 20-minute rest. Hopefully it's solid enough that I can cut it. Yeah, I think so. I'm putting it on a tea towel, as you can see, on some clean surface. And it gets cut into roughly, what I'm doing is probably going to be very roughly, 1-inch cubes. I don't want to put them in the water yet because I have to remove the sous vide first. But I'll bring you back when I have this cut into roughly 1-inch cubes, I guess. Well, now my cubes of curd just get added to the 145 degree water. And I may have to take some water out. It wasn't allowing for the volume of curd, but we'll see here. It stays in the 145 degree water until the temperature drops back to 130 degrees. So this is continuing the cooking process. I'm getting close to the top. I think I will get a small saucepan and take some water out of that. I don't know, I just took maybe a couple of cups or something. I didn't really measure it, but lowered the volume of it down a bit anyway. And now that I'm seeing the volume of it, I'm wondering whether I'm actually going to get to press it in the manchego mold. We'll see, I guess, when we carry on with this. But it says this could take anywhere from 1 hour to 2 hours for it to get down to 130. So I will be checking it periodically, and I'll bring you back when it reaches 130 degrees. I hope you'll be able to see something, and my arms won't completely cover everything up. It's gone down to 130 degrees, and I have put on 2 pairs of those food service gloves. You can't burn your hands at 130 degrees, but it is uncomfortably warm. And the idea now is to try to compress it into something a little more solid. I want you to do that under the water. It's hot under the water. It can be made into several smaller pieces or one large cheese. It even says that sometimes it's braided or whatever. It sort of has the consistency of mozzarella at this point when it's hot. I'll bring you back shortly when I've decided what exactly I'm doing here. Well, I have decided to put it in the manchego mold. Probably for a half hour or so at about 20-25 pounds of pressure. That is about 25 there, but I'm sure I'll have to keep resetting it. I had it into several of those sort of balls like you saw me working with there, but I couldn't see any way that by hand, that I could consolidate it into one mass, and that's what I want, is one mass. So we'll take it out of the manchego mold in a half hour and see what it looks like. If you don't know what manchego looks like, this is a piece of boughten manchego, and this is actually from Spain, made in the La Mancha area of Spain, and it's made with sheep's milk. I've made it once with cow's milk and, well, ate it, but I wasn't too happy with it, and of course don't have any access to sheep's milk. But this mold will put this pattern on the cheese, including this pattern on the top of the cheese. So I would say that this cheese was made in a mold just like this in Spain. The original pattern came from binding the cheese with braided straw, and they no longer do that, but they wanted to keep the design. So it's a delicious cheese. I like it very much. I seem to like most sheep's milk cheeses. There's one that you get in the Basque region of France, which is delicious also. And I only had that a few days, and I've already eaten about half of it. It's out of the press now, to see if I can get it out of the mold. I'm sure there will still be seams and cracks. And I'm right, there's seams and cracks. Getting a thing out of these manchego molds isn't the easiest thing in the world. There's a liner that has to come up, and it's what's putting the pattern on the side of the cheese. Anyway, I will bring you back once I manage to get it out of there. Well, as it turns out, it was just a matter of turning it upside down and shaking it. Just sort of suction or whatever was holding it in place, I guess. It is fairly solid, as solid as it's going to be for cheese that wasn't supposed to be pressed at all, but I just couldn't seem to get it into anything that I thought was going to hold together by doing it by hand. So you can see the nice pattern, I guess, from my holding it so that you can. And you can see some of the cracks and holes and whatever from the pieces of curd that aren't completely together, but that's okay. It will now be brined. I'll get my brining solution. Well, that's my 18% brining solution. New one that I made just for the cheddar cheese, I think is the only time it's been used. And it goes in there for 12 hours for one whole cheese. It'd only be an hour or two if you were doing a number of smaller cheeses. So in 6 hours time I will flip it, and I'll bring you back in 12 hours time to take it out of the brine. Well, it's out of the brine and ready to start drying. Certainly not the conventional shape for this cheese. Google it and look at the shape, what they're supposed to look like, but the best I could do, there's no way I could get it consolidated in that hot water, so I'm hoping it'll still have the same good flavor anyway. I want to weigh it. Okay, so it's almost 4 pounds. It's 3 pounds 15.3. Just changed to 15.4 ounces, which is still higher than the recipe said. The recipe said 3 1/4 to 3.5 pounds. So it's several ounces higher than what the recipe called for anyway. That's 3 cheeses in a row that I've used the sous vide for, and every time I get a higher weight than the recipe calls for. I'm beginning to think it's because of the accurate temperature using the sous vide that maybe you get a higher yield. I don't know. Anybody else out there that's used one having the same experience, I'd like to know about it, I guess. Well, this will now get covered over with a piece of, no, with a, I say cheesecloth, but no, with a tea towel. And a day or two from now, we'll be ready to cut and grill a piece of it and see what I think of it. Well, it's been a day and a half drying, and it feels quite dry, so I'm going to try cutting it in two so I can get a slice out of it that doesn't have a rounded edge. It's quite firm, quite solid inside. That's good to see, I guess. Let's see if I can cut a slice off of here that's, I don't know, about an inch thick. Roughly, anyway. I intend to vacuum seal the part that I'm not using immediately. And it says it'll last 2 or 3 weeks in this fridge if wrapped. Well, I don't know. There's wrapping and then there's vacuum packing. I think vacuum packed it'll last considerably longer than that, where the air can't get at it. It has a very faint smoked scent to it, so hopefully that means that the smoke isn't going to be overpowering. Now I get my grilling pan out and see how this grills. Well, I'm going to use my cast iron grilling pan. Just turn the flame on under it. Forgot to get a brush. I'm brushing it with peanut oil just because peanut oil has a higher smoking point. The actual cheese I'm going to brush with olive oil. Just to get the flavor of olive oil in there. I don't want the grill to get too hot. I don't think this stuff will melt, but I don't want it to adhere to the grilling band either. This one I've got it right there. I'll put a little olive oil on this side too. The pan also comes with a weight. This gizmo. So if I'm doing like a grilled cheese sandwich or whatever, I put that weight on top of it and it compresses it and makes it brown and melt the cheese faster, but I don't think I need to do it with this. And I'll bring you back when that is ready to turn for the first time. I cheated a little bit. I already looked under this one, so when I put it back I'm sure I've ruined the grill marks. We haven't looked under this one yet, so I don't know what it'll look like. It is sticking a little bit. That's better. Leave it until I have grill marks on the other side, and then we'll go to the dining room and try this. Well, one of the suggested ways of serving it was with a bit of lemon juice, but I want to try it first without it. It's a little on the chewy side, has a lovely smoke flavor, and you can certainly tell that it was brined. It also has a bit of a salty background taste. I like it. I've seen several other recipes and things that you can use it for other than just grilling it, so I will have fun experimenting with it. I think it was well worth the try, and I think that it's quite possibly the exact same cheese that I had in Italy, that I keep talking about. I'll never be 100% sure, but I think that is it. It sort of squeaks on your teeth when you're chewing it. I'll try it with just a little bit of lemon juice, see what I think of that. I like the smoked flavor. I was concerned there that I might have used too much, but of course a lot of the smoke left in the way that we discarded, but it has just a lovely mild smoke flavor. And the tartness of the lemon does add another unique flavor to it. Well, if you can either find this cheese in a shop near you, or a cheesemaker and want to try making it, I think it's well worth the effort. Thank you very much for watching.